Hi, I'm Drew, and this is Faith 15. What is Holy Week? Now, Christians all over the world celebrate Easter, but not everyone knows Holy Week. So I'd like to take just a minute to talk to you a little bit about Holy Week, what it is, what it's about, right? And what we actually intend for this time. Now, Holy Week is the week immediately before Easter. For those of us in more liturgical traditions, the season before Easter is called Lent. Now, this season, as I've described it before, is a season of learning, preparing, and intention. We often mark it by doing something to bring greater awareness to what God is calling us to do. Now, the season is sometimes called the 40 days of Lent. But if you get out your calendar and start counting from Ash Wednesday to Easter, you're going to count more than 40. Right? There are all sorts of thoughtful explanations and justifications for this. They all sound good. But the reality is that the early Christians liked the idea of it being symbolically 40 days more than they actually liked making it literally 40 days. Now, Holy Week comes along with the sixth Sunday after Ash Wednesday, and a day that we call Palm Sunday. Right? And so while it is still Lent, it is also now Holy Week. So we mark this time not with the color purple, but now with the color red. Then our attention turns to the end of the week, when the church highlights the true centerpiece of the church calendar, the time in which we both honor and reflect on the death and resurrection of Jesus. Now, early Christians understood that the resurrection of Jesus was a mind-blowing idea. God chose to rewrite the rules for the whole world. And they understood that for us to truly understand this moment of transformation, we would have to understand the relationship of these two ideas, death and resurrection. Right? And more precisely, that we'd have to find beauty in the dying as leading to new life. That we would need to have that piece, these two pieces, work together in our hearts. So we can see the parallel of this idea with our baptismal theology. Of course, we say that in baptism we die to ourselves so that we can be born again. We talk about turning away from sin and turning toward God so that we might receive God's grace, that we could be transformed and reconciled, right? These ideas make sense to us. As Rowan Williams has said, our work is to form people into the kinds of people who can receive the gifts God wants to give. So here is the end of something and the beginning of something else. In Holy Week, we capture this moment of transition and celebrate it in a great big 3-day event that we call the Triduum. Right? Think of it as a mashup of a never-ending church service, this vigil that goes on all night, and a weekend festival with a bunch of different acts playing throughout. Right? We start on Thursday with a service that we call Maundy Thursday. And in it, we remember the Last Supper, the washing of the disciples' feet, and then the exit into the Garden of Gethsemane as things begin the Passion. And we reconvene on Good Friday to go through the story of the passion of the Christ, and then hear of his crucifixion. And then we complete the cycle when we gather that third time on Saturday night or at dawn on Sunday morning in the great vigil of Easter, in which we remember the empty tomb and begin the celebration of the resurrection. Now, there's a natural tension during Holy Week between the potential that we have of play acting the death of Jesus, in which we continuously put ourselves in the place of experiencing Jesus' death as his disciples over and over again, right, on the one hand, and then taking seriously that we are not living 2,000 years ago or reliving it 2,000 years later, but that Jesus hasn't been dying every year for 2,000 years, but that we are presently the embodiment of the resurrection. So we approach Holy Week with the total belief that God's love does conquer death. So why then do we do this? Because we need to keep remembering why this is. We have to live through this story so that we can understand precisely who God is. That God is in the business of liberating people and transforming the world. So my favorite way into Holy Week is to read the gospel story as it is captured from the triumphal entry that we celebrate on Palm Sunday, all the way through to Holy Saturday when Jesus is put in the tomb. I do this because it grounds me in the story. It highlights the humanity of both the disciples and the temple leaders, and reminds us of who Jesus came in the flesh to be then, and who the Christ invites us to continue becoming here and now. That God didn't just transform the world that one time, but continues to bring us into an ongoing process of transformation.